What would you do if you could time travel to the past and shape a better present? Meet Takemichi, a 26-year-old generic bum. He's an A-grade simp who found out that the only girlfriend he ever had died in a car accident. And the cause of the accident, obviously, some big shot gang activity. He starts remembering about his ex-girlfriend, but quickly dumps the thought as he goes back to his work. And guess what? Even at work, my man sucks at shelving DVDs. He's so weak that he gets scolded left and right, and even by 12 years old on the street gang up on him. But nevertheless, he doesn't give up as he's thinking about his pathetic life while waiting for the train to arrive. And then suddenly, it's like Tanya the Evil that he gets pushed off the platform in front of the train. But instead of getting isekai to a different world, the train hit makes Takemichi go back 12 years into the past. He thinks it's just him remembering his pathetic life. He's back in his middle schooler body with his delinquent rooster look. Feeling confused, he was trying to figure out what was actually going on and followed his friends to a fight. This man lately realizes that he's going to get the crap beaten out of him and still doesn't warn any of his friends. So while waiting in the park, some mature delinquents come. Wait, not mature. They're just third years in the middle school, and those held-back students beat the lights out of all of them. This was the trigger that made Takemichi's life go downhill, and still, it took him beating to remember. While realizing how pathetic his life was, he finally remembers his now-dead girlfriend Hinata. The simp then goes to see her for one last time, and then realizes his true nature, a crybaby simp. While he was realizing all these in the park, his self-reflection was disturbed by a bunch of wannabe delinquents trying to bully a kid. Takemichi gets furious about it and beats the wannabes and ends up saving Hinata's younger brother, Naoto. They talk about this and that, and Takemichi ends up saying the fact that he's from the future and recommends Naoto to save his sister in 12 years in the future. Once the men are determined that both of them want to save Hinata, they shake on it and this triggers something. Takemichi goes back into the future and wakes up in a hospital bed. Seeing this, Takemichi is further confused and Naoto comes up to him and explains. So the thing is, Takemichi has the ability to go back 12 years into the past whenever he and Naoto shake hands. Oh, and the train that was supposed to kill Takemichi, turns out he told Naoto about it during their talk in the playground, and Naoto ends up saving him but still fails to save Hinata. So now, Naoto gives Takemichi a new mission to go back into the past to fix the events that caused Hinata's death. Naoto is a police officer and he tells Takemichi that the reason his sister died is because of the Tokyo Manji Gang, Toman for short. Thus, Takemichi was to go back to the past and make sure Sano, aka Miki and Kisaki, the twin leaders of Toman, are either dead or they never meet. This leads to Takemichi digesting a ton of information about the gang that he will never end up using. But still, he shakes hands and goes back to the past. He finds himself in the middle of a fight and ends up getting beaten up as usual. After the fight, he gets the main dish as he makes the mistake of mentioning Mikey in front of Kiyomasa, the ringleader. My boy gets beaten so bad that simp inside him dies, but only for a moment. He went to meet Naoto but meets Hinata instead, and the fire of fixing everything is reignited. So the next day he challenges Kiyomasa in front of the whole fight club, and guess what? Gets beaten again. But this time, Draken, Mikey's best buddy, and Mikey arrives at the scene. They beat the crap out of Kiyomasa for running a shady thing under the name of Toman. He also declares Takemichi as his friend. No, this is not plot armor. This is the meeting of protagonists. Then the very next day, while Takemichi is in class, Mikey comes in and takes Michi with him in front of the teacher. While they were talking in front of the locker, Hinata arrives because she had to and slaps Mikey. This infuriates Draken as he threatens her. But Takemichi doesn't take this lightly and stands up against Draken only to be pranked. That's because Mikey has the policy of not hurting women and upholding chivalrous delinquent acts. This triggers a train of thoughts within Takemichi, and he realizes that Mikey was not the reason for Toman to become an evil organization in the future. One thing leads to another, and he ends up going back to Hinata's place. And while trying to enjoy the moment, he ends up holding hands with Naoto. This triggers the time travel. Then, Takemichi explains everything to Naoto, and they find that whenever he goes back, he regresses exactly 12 years to the past, and as long as he's in the past, his body in the present stays in a suspended animation state. Naoto finds out that Mikey is not the real villain and he does a bit more digging and finds that Akun, a former friend of Takemichi, is within the upper echelon of Toman. They end up meeting him only for him to commit suicide. But before jumping to his death, Akun does reveal that since the death of Draken, Mikey has jumping to his death. Akun does reveal that since the death of Draken, Mikey has completely changed into the ruthless gangster that caused Toman to change. With his new clue, the Nato and Takemichi duo does further digging only to find that Draken was killed in a gang fight. So, Takemichi had the new mission to stop this death and regress back to the past. Once he's back, he finds himself in a tricky situation. He's under a girl in her underwear, and the worst thing is, he still runs from that place. But then he gets a call from Draken to meet him and ends up being at the heart of the Toman gang meeting. Then he finds out that the Toman will be having a showdown against the Mobius, and this presents a revelation to Takemichi as he reaches the conclusion that Draken will be killed during the showdown. So he comes back to the present and tries to find out everything about the showdown. But instead of finding a solution, he's further confused as the past reports say that Draken was killed by the Mikey faction, which is impossible since Takemichi knows how good of a relationship Mikey and Draken have. So he goes back to the past and tries to stop the fight from ever happening. But while trying to stop the fight with Mobius, Pa, the 3rd Division commander of Toman, stabs Asanai, the leader of Mobius, and gives himself up to the authorities. This, instead of stopping the fight, triggers the start of internal collision between the Toman members. Half of them were with Mikey, who wanted to save Pa, and the other half was with Draken, who wanted to respect Pa's decision. But Takemichi somehow ends up mitigating this conflict with some shit on his head, literally. After this, Draken and Takemichi go on a double date to the festival. One thing leads to another, and Takemichi ends up alone with Hinata. Just when he was going to have the first ever kiss of his life, he's bombshelled with the news that some of the Toman guys are still out for Draken's blood. So he rushes to find Draken, but ends up finding Kiyomasa, who still had a grudge against Draken and wanted to kill him. Takemichi, like the brain dead he is, tries to reason with Kiyomasa, only to end up duct taped and left in the rain. But this leads to a good thing as he gets not only his first kiss, but also in the Spider-Man precision from Hinata, who saves him from the taped-up state. After being free, Takemichi starts looking for Draken, only to find him fighting in the parking lot. There, they start talking when it turns out that it was the Mobius who actually started the internal conflict, and this triggers an epic gang brawl between Toman and Mobius. During the slugfest, Takemichi keeps looking for Draken, only to find him half dead on the ground. Seeing this, Takemichi loses his mind but returns to reality when he finds out that Draken was still alive. So he takes Draken on his back and starts moving towards the hospital instead of calling for an ambulance. But while going to the hospital, Kiyomasa blocked his path. Seeing that his path was blocked, Takemichi gathers up courage and faces Kiyomasa. But this time, he actually beats his opponent. However, he still was not in the safe because he only beat Kiyomasa. His lackeys were standing. So, Draken and Takemichi stand shoulder to shoulder to offer the last stand. But then, as a light of hope, the Mizomid's Ferocious Five arrives at the scene. They're the best buddies of Takemichi, and they will protect them. But who am I kidding? They end up getting the crap beaten out of them. Though resistance was futile, the resistance was fruitful. That's because the ambulance the Hinata called has arrived. So they rush Draken to the hospital. There, after intense operation and praying, Draken lives. This is good news for the entirety of Toman and also Takemichi, as he was finally able to change the future. So he returns to the present as his mission was complete. He was happy because he was able to save his ex's life. But he couldn't confirm all this since, in this new future, he had lost Naoto's number. But he soon finds that his friend Akun, who was supposed to die as a Toman executive, was now a hairdresser. This means that he was able to change the future. While he was having a happy moment, he gets a call from Naoto. He asks to meet up and informs him that Hinata was still alive and he should meet with her. So they go to Hinata's place, but things are very awkward since Takemichi and Hinata apparently broke up 12 years ago. One thing leads to another, and Takemichi and Hinata end up alone together. When Hinata was about to confess her feelings to Takemichi, the dude has a sudden urge to go to the washroom. He cools down his mind and was about to go back when he's faced with Hanma, former Mobius leader. Hanma tells him that he was supposed to be in the car with her. Takemichi realizes what Hanma meant and starts running toward the car that Hinata was in. But he was late as another car had already crashed into the small car that Hinata was in. Takemichi, with a devastating attitude, walks towards the crash site only to find Akun on the driver's seat of the crashed car. Akun tells Takemichi that he was sorry and he could not disobey Kisaki as he was afraid. Then, Takemichi finds out that Hinata was still alive and tries to take her out, but Hinata's lower body was already destroyed. Hinata asks Takemichi to be happy and the car blows up. With the fiery site at his background, Takemichi realizes that the only way to stop Kisaki in reformed Taman was to become an executive within Taman, and he swears to become an executive to save Hinata. And that's the end of the video. If you like it, please subscribe to the channel and see you at the next one.